we discuss and seek a change in long-term athletic development. My name is Ben Wellbach, and I'm the dad of two girls, strength coach, and owner of Be Well Fitness. It is my desire to help educate and shift the way our current culture operates regarding long-term athletic development. I was first introduced to our guest today in 2018. He was a friend of my coach, Will Chung, and when he came out to visit and asked if I would be open to meeting a friend of his, I jumped at the opportunity. He said he is the mad scientist of muscle. I said, like, that's what you think, or that's his name? He said that is his nickname because the creativity and passion he has for training and constantly seeking better has led him to push the science to creative thresholds. Over the years, I've been able to have a number of trainings and interactions with Nick Nilsson, and he is at the top of the list when it comes to redefining and defining longevity. As I do with every guest on the podcast, I will pair each guest with a sneaker from the Nike collection that best represents them. In 1989, Nike introduced the Nike Air Pressure. This shoe was a technological experiment. It certainly pushed the boundaries of design with an air bladder pressure system that you could inflate or deflate with an included pump to your desired level. Some considered it a modern marvel of a shoe. It was designed by the infamous Tinker Hatfield and was worn by professional basketball players, rock stars, and rappers. Although I believe Nick's favorite Nike shoe is the Monarch for its strong, stable design, I felt the Air Pressure best represented his advancement and design in strength and conditioning. So Nick, welcome, and thank you very much for taking the time to share some lessons learned for long-term athletic development.
Yeah, man, thanks to be here. And that's honestly the first time I've been represented by a shoe, and I love it. That's awesome.
Well, I, I really have had fun pairing the guests up with the Nike shoe, and this one like just blasted out at me.
Yeah, that nails it. Absolutely.
And what's interesting is, Tinker Hatfield, the designer of the shoe, is responsible for the Jordan 3 all the way up to, I think, 18. I could be wrong on that. And then all these different like specialty shoes. He actually designed the Bat shoe in Batman Returns. He designed, the shoe that Marty McFly wears that like
That laces itself up.
Yep.
Yeah.
He designed that one.
Nice.
So it's very cool.
That's very cool.
But let's kind of start with you, like growing up. Where did you grow up? Brothers, sisters? What was your childhood like from a sports and athletic standpoint?
I grew up in British Columbia, kind of right by the Idaho border. So lots of outdoor activities, lots of winter sports. I have one sister. She always got thrown into all these sports and activities along with me. My dad was very big into sports, and in his later years, he ended up becoming an ultra endurance athlete, like to the level of like Guinness Book of World Records kind of stuff. To give you an example, he roller skied across Canada in 3.5 months. He went from Victoria all the way across to Newfoundland, skiing probably about between 50 to 70 miles a day, every day for 3.5 months. So yeah, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about.
So the apple doesn't far from the tree.
Not at all, no. And so I grew up thinking, going to like every sport imaginable, doing all this endurance stuff was actually completely normal. And my dad, he didn't even go to a regular gym. He actually built a gym out of plumbing pipe in his basement with the plumbing pipe, the things, duct tape, padding, stuff that normally would go in the landfill was in the basement. And, I saw that, of course, and I used a lot of that stuff as I was growing up because it was fun to use that kind of thing. Like I was hanging upside down. I was doing, slide board stuff with an inner tube tied off full of sand on my back because I was into speed skating at the time. So we did a lot of speed skating. So that was for building up endurance and speed skating. soccer, skiing, long distance running, track and field, pretty much you name it. One year in high school, I got voted athlete of the year because I decided to join the basketball team. They put me on the basketball team even though I sucked at basketball because I could run all day. I had like endurance for days. Like I could literally, so I had some level of athleticism that they said, okay, you're the last person to join the team. So that allowed me to get that award because it was always a basketball player that won it. So
Nice. That is awesome.
yeah, so I grew up literally with thinking that kind of stuff is normal to do.
Yeah.
And, that's obviously stuck with me.
I feel like you've got like pipes for structure now because of it. Like
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great kind of metaphor for what you've currently created. We'll get into a little bit of that as we go, but I mean, you're 51 now,
Yeah.
and I mean, totally redefine what aging looks like, feels like, and that's really what's pretty exceptional.
Thanks. Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, it's
Well,
really been a journey to kind of to do that because I don't feel 51. I don't feel much different than when I was in my 30s. And I was at a restaurant a couple months ago, and it's waiting in at the front desk and for a takeout order, and the people around me were like talking about how old they were, and I told them, yeah, I'm 51, and they're like, get out, you're not 51, you're 35.
yeah,
Like no, I'm actually 51. Yeah, they couldn't even believe it. It's like, no, it's like you can actually keep progressing and keep improving even as you get into your late 40s, 50s. There's nothing to say that you can't, as long as you're consistent with it and you don't beat yourself into the ground, and cause injury.
yeah. I mean, I think that kind of leads to like the next question, which is, you know, what do you, let's say, what do you hear the biggest complaint or, you know, bottleneck or whatever, let's say, word you want to call it from the adults that you interact with, whether it's on social media or folks that are, using your programs or, seek to do that. What's the biggest holdup?
Ironically, it's not even physical, it's mental. I think a lot of people, especially people who haven't grown up doing training and sports, they don't really kind of think that their body is, or they think their body's more frail than their body actually is. So they don't really push things like they could or potentially should. I mean, not to say that you need to, destroy yourself in the gym or anything, but you can, with proper training and recovery and nutrition and all that, really move the needle forward. And I've also found that once you kind of break through that barrier mentally, then the physical stuff comes really, really strong after that. Like you can, really, people who grew up years and years ago, they're used to hard work, whether it's physical labor or something. But I've noticed that a lot of people who are older actually enjoy the hard work and the physical labor. And once they realize, okay, this isn't going to hurt me, they really put some power into it. And it's really, really cool to see. We've probably seen, videos of bodybuilders in their 80s and 90s and stuff like that, and power lifters 80s, 90s. This is kind of an example of what you can keep doing. And these are people, some of them started even when they were in their 60s and 70s. So there's so much you can do. Just because, you're over 50 doesn't mean that you're, need to accept going quietly into the night,
So it's never too late. You're never too old. You can always make some progress.
Yeah.
I mean, I know one of your goals. I can't exactly remember you've got a title for it, but for those that don't follow you on social media, your recent goal has been to basically carry. You're up to 1,000 pounds now, right?
Yep. The main goal is the Inman mile, which is
There you go.
1.5 times your body weight for a mile straight.
Okay.
Without setting the weight down or anything
Yes.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, the Inman mile. So
Yeah.
what you have said though in your posts on this is, you have spent decades building that structure up. You have, done it through all types of muscle tissue fiber work and improving your bone density over time just by doing this.
Mhm.
So I guess I bring that up because do you get people that, you know, want to use your programs or want that same effect for long term, but they basically get deterred from even starting because they go, there's no way I'm even putting 100 pounds on my back.
Yeah, there's a lot of resistance to that kind of thing, especially when people see the weight that I'm using. Some people can't even comprehend, and they're like, "Oh, you're going to destroy your back," is the first thing that comes out of their
Mhm.
mouth. And if you start with that weight, yeah, you will. You'll be in the hospital pretty quick. But I did not start with that weight. I started doing like the heavy supports and heavy partial stuff back when I was, my maybe third or fourth year of training, which is way back in, my early 20s. So, and I've been doing this consistently, not as frequently as I'm doing it right now, but over that time, I was, always including, partial training, lockouts, that kind of thing, very regularly. So enough to maintain that level. Like when I first started building up partials, I was like, oh man, I gotta not go too heavy with this. So I, started with my 1 rep max kind of thing for a squat and just did partial range, and then I would, on a weekly basis add, 90 pounds, 90 pounds, 90 pounds. So in the course of like 6 to 8 weeks, I had worked up to, holding like 800 pounds on my back, and early 20s. But the key is to give your body enough time to acclimate, enough time to adapt to the loads that you're using, and your body is really incredible with how it can do that kind of thing. So that's really what I'm focusing on right now. And over the past year, I've kind of been targeting at 1 training day a week to that Inman mile stuff. When I first heard of this challenge, it was a buddy of mine who said, "Oh, this would be perfect for you." And I looked at it, I'm like, that's going to be a challenge. Like, I don't know if that's humanly possible. And nobody in the world has ever, that we know of, completed it. And I don't think anybody actually will. And I'll tell you why. Because the true Inman mile, the event as listed, is using a straight barbell.
Oh boy.
So I tested that outside in my street there, and
Yeah.
I put on just my body weight, not 1.5 times. I wanted to test just body weight, and I got up and then halfway back down the street, which is probably about a quarter of a mile, before my shoulders got injured. So just holding that position, the bar just kind of starts sliding down, and then you're in that widely externally rotated position, and it's just the load just it'll annihilate your shoulders. I was holding that weight for about probably 8 minutes, and to do a mile will take about at least 25 minutes. So to be able to hold that much weight on your back for that length of time is, I'm not gonna say it's impossible because you never know. But when I do it, I'm going to use a Mars bar, which is a version of the
Yep.
safety squat bar,
Yeah.
and that sits on your body more like a backpack. So instead of your shoulder health being the determining factor, it's basically going to be how long can you, support that load and be crushed under that weight and still move forward.
Yeah.
Like the carrying of it's going to be, I'm aiming for about 180 body weight, so the weight will be about 270, which 270 is no problem. But holding 270 on my back for 25 minutes straight, that's more what I'm training for right now. And because I've tested the mile, I've tested the walking with it. I did manage to do 155 for a mile straight last summer, so I got a ways to go. But over this entire winter, 1 day a week, I've been training really heavy supports and really heavy carries inside a power rack.
Mhm.
And the numbers and the durations that I'm doing right now are just like something I couldn't even fathom like a year ago. It's like, is that even humanly possible? Like to give an example, with 1,000 pounds, I've worked up to doing supports with 1,000 pounds for a full minute. And just it may not sound like a minute is a long time, but when you're under 1,000 pounds, it's a pretty good amount of time. And to be able to, because you have to be able to breathe under that load, and you have to be able to relax everything that's not necessary to support that load. Otherwise, your blood pressure will go through the ceiling. I did a video a few weeks ago where I actually had 800 pounds on my back and holding it there for a couple minutes, and actually having like if you zoomed in on just my face, you'd think I'd be having a normal conversation. You wouldn't know that I had 800 pounds on my back. And then you pan out and it's like, okay, yeah, I'm supporting 800 pounds while I'm talking like we're talking right now.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of breath control that you need for that kind of challenge.
Yeah. So do you how do you train the breath control? Do you do it under load? Do you do it both under load and outside of that?
I primarily do it under load because that's more the goal I'm looking for here. What I've come up with is, if you've heard the concept of square breathing or combat breathing, where you're in 4 seconds, hold 4 seconds, out 4 seconds, hold 4 seconds,
Sure.
you can't do that under heavy load. So I came up with the concept of triangle breathing, where you're in 4 seconds, hold 4 seconds, out, hold seconds, then immediately breathe back in. Because if you exhale everything and hold that position, you lose all your stability in your core. And you need some of that in your lungs in order to maintain the structure in your body. So it's like immediately out of the bottom, so you boom, right back up. And that really works quite well, and it allows you to control your breathing without losing the stability in your body. And that kind of thing can apply potentially to squats as well. So it's just that it's the rapid, change at the bottom of the exhalation.
Well, part of the reason why I bring that up is because I believe, from a longevity standpoint, breathing is very undervalued. I think it's honestly taken for granted. We don't maybe even think right now in this conversation about our own breath and what we're doing. Are we breathing mostly out of our mouth because we're talking, or nasal breathing? And so I think there's enough evidence out there, and certainly would love to hear your thoughts, but enough evidence that supports the importance of doing breath work and various forms of it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. I think that is like you have your mobility, flexibility, strength, but the capability of breathing and controlling your breathing is something that is neglected.
Yeah.
And that's why I kind of gravitated to the breathing under load thing and doing a lot of breath control under load, because for me, I always gravitate to resistance. I always gravitate to making things as difficult as possible. So not just breathing, normally, but okay, now I got to put, 900 pounds on my back, and now I got to control my breathing. So to be able to do that, I think, and you don't need to necessarily have that much weight on your back, but even trying something like that, where you just put like a squat amount of weight on your back, and you just hold there and stand, and then control your breathing while you're under that load and kind of see how that feels. Because your breath is controlled by muscles, just like everything in your body is controlled by muscles. And those muscles can be developed with, to be stronger.
Yeah.
So that's using resistance can really help with that, is what I find. And, one of the things that was a limiting factor for me in the carrying stuff was the ability to maintain that breathing structure. After about, when I'm carrying heavier loads out there, that's when I was finding that I was starting to get, my breathing was getting compromised. And I knew that was what I needed to work on, because that gives you the feel of being slowly crushed. And, as fun as that sounds, as you can build that up, and if you can build that up and not get that feeling, even better. And that's kind of what I've been working on with the ridiculously heavy loads is, I've got the bone structure. Now it's primarily focused on just holding that load and breathing. I was doing sets of, carries inside the power rack, so like stepping forward and backward inside the rack.
Right.
Sets of 3 minutes with 605 pounds the other day. And, it wasn't even that challenging anymore to me. So it's like, I'm building it up pretty good. So I know when I put 270 on the bar, it feels like I'm floating away.
Right.
So,
I know it. Yeah. It almost doesn't even, it may not even register.
Yeah, honestly, and that's the goal, and that's what I experienced when I was doing some post-activation potentiation, where I would start my warm-up with a much heavier load. So I would put like 400 and something pounds in the bar, walk, about 100 yards up down the street and back, re-rack the bar, and then I would take most of that weight off, and I would carry like 150 pounds, and I felt like I was literally floating away, like I could go for a run with this weight on my back.
Yeah.
And, it felt like there was nothing there. And so when I actually do the challenge, that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to load it up to like double that, walk a little bit, get that compression, get that nervous system activation, and then remove a lot of that weight. and then it's just like there's nothing on your back, at least for 10 minutes or so, and then
Yeah.
you start getting crushed. But
I have a similar experience, not to that level, but the neighborhood that I live in is just like a big circle. And if you go the right route, the circle is like exactly a mile from the start of my driveway back to the end.
nice.
And I wear a rucksack that's about, you know, 60 pounds. And then I have two 16 kilo, so like 35-ish pound kettlebells in my hand. And I'll walk the mile with all that. Then I put the kettlebells down and I'll either walk or I'll actually jog with just the rucksack on. And then the last mile, I'll do just body weight. And as soon as I take that rucksack off, I feel like one of those gummy bear cartoons. I'm just like bouncing, it's like I had gummy juice. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh,
So
absolutely.
I know exactly what you're talking about. And
It's a really cool feeling, actually.
yeah,
It's like you get that compression, and then when you take that load off, the decompression just,
yes,
it's crazy.
yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So, it kind of leads to, the next question, which is, you were mentioning where you currently are. You're at 600 pounds for 3 minutes, just walking back and forth in the rack. And, let's say someone outside the strength and conditioning, industry may hear that and go, that's like insane, right?
Even in the industry.
But even in it, I was just about to say, but someone who like is around it every day and who knows is going, that's insane, right? So, what are you finding as the common misconceptions, that people have in general, just for like doing something like, oh, I can't gain muscle because I'm 51, or I'll never have a six pack, or I'm past I can't get stronger. Like what are some of the things that you're hearing?
I think a lot of it is people don't really have the knowledge to know where to start. Because once you kind of know where to start and the first steps to take, then it just starts building up from there. But it's taking that first step. It's making that commitment to yourself to, put one foot in front of the other and start doing something at least, and start. So a lot of people will just say, okay, my conception is that I will never get there, so therefore I shouldn't do anything. So therefore, I heard a joke the other day that was cracking me up. It's like some guy said, yeah, so I'm a smoker and I decided to smoke while I'm jogging. It's like, I know that's stupid, so I quit jogging. So I thought that was hilarious, because it's like, yeah, okay, you can also, if you're a smoker and you're a jogger, okay, fine, but you're doing something, maybe at some point you want to quit. That'd be great. Not the jogging, but the smoking. But just doing one step in the right direction, having the knowledge to kind of move in the right direction, and having a coach or a trainer kind of guide you in the beginning is really, really important, because then you feel confident in the steps that you're taking. And there's somebody who's helped other people accomplish what you want to accomplish or have thought about accomplishing, and they can help you move in that right direction. When I used to do personal training a while ago, that was what I ran into with a lot of people who just were like, I used to do this when I was working on cruise ships. And the primary thing people would do is just like, I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. I see people all the time come in and they go in the pull down machine and they put like 20 pounds in the bar and they're just like flailing around and stuff. And they're like, I don't feel anything. I don't know what I'm doing. And these are the people who you had immediately, you say, I'm the trainer here. Can I help you, run you through a couple exercises, and just giving them a base level of knowledge on how to do, a few exercises, like not even free weight stuff, but it's like, the gym we had was like, here's 8 different machines. It did have free weight too, but here's just some machines, and I'd run them through like, here's how to do each machine properly. And within a couple of days, they'd be bursting with confidence, because they could actually feel their muscles working. And once that feeling is really taking hold, that's when people really get excited about it and know that they can make changes to their body.
I mean, I think really what you're saying is the importance of education and a support system. I think what you just said is finding people who have already accomplished what you want to accomplish
Yeah,
is huge.
it's huge. It cuts the learning curve, and it prevents from that fear of injury. It's like if you got somebody who knows what they're doing, they can tell you, okay, don't do this, don't go too far on this, that kind of thing. It can really shortcut a lot of the process by telling you exactly what you need to do, and not a bunch of extra stuff that's not going to help you, but here's the most focused path on to get to where you want to get to. And once people realize that and they do start to feel it with good instruction, they start to feel a change very, very quickly. Then that gets very exciting for them.
Yeah, and I think I think it absolutely speaks to the whole, quote unquote mind body connection,
Mhm.
and mind body spirit connection, because you just said it, and I see it too in every day, where no matter if you're a 10-year-old or you're a 70-year-old, the stronger you are, there's a level of confidence that you're walking around with, that you're building up, that I think is a major effect in our lives, that potentially you can't measure. It's maybe like an immeasurable benefit, but a benefit nonetheless.
Absolutely. I can't think of a single instance where strength is a negative in anything, in anybody. Being stronger is always going to be a benefit. I mean, you think of somebody who's, say, around 80 years old, and the difference between them living in a nursing home or living at home is, can they get up off a chair?
Yep.
Can they get up off the toilet? Can they stand up? And that's strength. That's, as important as like everything else is, like flexibility, mobility, cardiovascular, none of that matters if you're not strong enough to get up out of a chair, you know? And that's where I think strength training is just absolutely critical as you get older. And, maintaining and developing strength. And you can be 90 years old and start strength training and build strength when you're 90 years old. There's numerous studies that show that absolutely happens. And it's to see somebody who is, previously chair-bound or bed-bound, to be able to, stand up and function again. I haven't done it personally, but I know some physiotherapists who have seen that happen, and it's like the most rewarding thing for them to be able to help somebody to do that, to basically rebuild themselves even when they have almost given up on themselves. And it's such an important thing even when you're younger. Like one of the things, I used to coach a swim team when I was younger, like in my late teens, and I noticed that the kids absolutely ate up the hard work. Like they were not used to being pushed, because a lot of people coddle children in a way. Like I never, like I don't have any kids, but I don't treat kids like kids. I Not like I treat them like adults or anything, but I don't treat them like babies, I should say. It's like I give them stuff that it's going to be difficult, it's going to challenge them, and I don't coddle them at all. If they can't do it, I don't make them feel bad about it. It's like, great, you learned, and now we're going to build up, and we'll get it next time, kind of thing. So it's always a positive thing. But they loved hard work. They loved being pushed. We had a technique called pukies. So it was basically, yeah, and kids would actually ask me to do these, because they loved it. So we had a 25-meter lap pool. So they would dive into the pool, swim as hard as they could to the end of the pool, hop out, and do 5 push-ups. Jump back in the pool, swim 25 hard as they could, do 5 push-ups. And they would go back and forth 8 to 10 times. And literally, that's why they call them pukies. But these kids, like, I mean, not all of them, not all kids are going to thrive on that, but the kids who just loved hard work, they would just like, they would be raring to go. They would say, can we do these? Because they loved the physical challenge of it, and they loved building that strength, and they felt like they really accomplished something once they finished. And I think that's missing from a lot of the mentality of things these days, especially with the participation trophies and stuff like that. It's like, never gonna do that, something like that. This is life, and if you want to really go out and take it by the horns, you got to go out there and earn it. You got to work for it. And kids actually gravitate to that when they do it in an environment where nobody's going to make fun of them for not being able to do it. If their push-ups were crap, and a lot of times their push-ups were like stiff arm and they were like slapping their pelvis on the ground and stuff. I'm like, No, we're not doing that. It's like if you can only do a half push-up or a quarter push-up, that's fine. But you're going to bend your arms and, then we're going to get you back in there. And over time, they literally would, their push-ups were getting better and better and better. And they felt good about it and they felt strong and they felt accomplished when they were doing it. And they literally would ask me to do this, like the hardest thing they could possibly do. They would look for it.
There is a recent podcast that I was listening to, and it was talking about the relationship of hormones and challenge and or competition.
Mhm.
And what I found interesting was that the hormones of testosterone and dopamine were increased upon a challenge or competition.
Mhm.
And what you're talking about is more than just, let's say, one system of work. You're talking about kind of this ripple effect across multiple systems for mental, physical, emotional health.
Mhm.
And it also brings up to me, there are very few folks like yourself who are individually driven or have that internal drive to do hard things on their own.
Yeah.
Which is why I think it is so important, and I would love your thoughts on this, to have a coach or a culture or community that you're a part of, especially as an adult,
Mhm.
that will help, one, keep you safe, but two, certainly do things and program things and facilitate things for you that you wouldn't necessarily think to do yourself.
Yeah, that's 100%. And a lot of times when people see the stuff that I do, the first thing they say is, well, after I guess the second thing they say, the first thing they say is that's freaking nuts. But the second thing they say is I could never do something like that by myself. It's like, how can you train at home by yourself? I need to be around other people. I need the external motivation. I need, somebody showing me what to do. And for me, that's never been an issue. The internal motivation is, I don't even call it motivation because I don't even need motivation. It's like just that's what I do. You know, it doesn't even feel like I need to be motivated to do it. It's like this is what I do.
Mhm.
And but in general, for most people, that social aspect of it, that support aspect of it, it's why CrossFit, has such a big following. It becomes, very much a social thing as well, and you get people challenging each other and being around, and that competitive nature of it is huge. And for me, I have my competitive nature right now is competing against myself and what can I do to push things in myself further. And so that's where I used to do a lot more competing when I was younger, like when I was up to about early teens until I went off to college. I was competing in things constantly, like ski races, speed skating, swimming, soccer. You know, there was probably not even a single week in a whole year where I wasn't competing at something. And so when I went to college, that kind of carried over into weight training. So my first year of college, I discovered, training. I also discovered cafeteria food and gained 75 pounds. So probably
Wow.
it was about three-quarters of it was muscle, but I gained a fair bit of fat on there too. Like I did programs for magazines for 3 or 4 months, and then I realized, what, my gains were starting to taper off as they do after that kind of thing with that kind of training. I was hitting 2-hour workouts, and I'm like, this can't be right. And so I got in an ad for a magazine, I saw the Bulgarian burst system, which is big beyond belief. Leo Costa, I should say. And that actually really got me on the right path because instead of doing 2-hour workouts, I was doing 2 workouts a day, but 45 minutes each. And that high frequency stuff was much, much better. And it really taught me what you can do to build muscle very quickly by working with your body instead of against your body. And that's, I went from 145 pounds skinny cross country runner to 220 in the course of 8 months.
Never
All,
look back.
yeah, all natural. And, swear on my life, all natural, never touched anything, no hormones like that at all. So,
Yeah, yeah.
blessed with a gigantic appetite, of course, mind you, that helps a lot. But, there were some days I was eating more than 8,000 calories a day because I tracked it.
But I think, sure, I'm sure there's some, genetics in there. There's no doubt about that. I also have, discussed with previous guests on the podcast that your environment is a role. In fact, my very first mentor, Mike Boyle, I loved his take on it. He said that the environment was the multiplier,
Yeah.
that you're around your dad who's doing all of these things. That's just like what you knew. That was your environment.
Yep.
And that, to me, that is the multiplier for sure for you. And I think you've created the ability to have the 8,000 calorie day consumptions.
Yeah, oh, I'd say so for sure. Yeah, and that's so true with the environment. I think that's a great way to put it. Because for me personally, I have an ectomorph body type. But because I was able to get into the right training and be able to eat that much, I can create like a mesomorphic frame essentially. Not true mesomorph, like more ectomesomorph, but my basic body type is skinny. Like when I was doing, cross country running, I was literally like 145 pounds and probably like about 6% body fat. And I did a triathlon without even training for it. So it's like that's the kind of endurance shape that I was in. But when I switched over to weight training, I took that, capacity to eat, capacity to train into the gym. And, you know, the body thrives on that when you're doing stuff that it actually is good. And luckily, I did have some guidance in the beginning there too, as far as here's how to do exercises correctly. And, once I kind of got bitten by the bug, so to speak, then I really went in depth in it and took that as one of my degrees in college as well. So I have a degree in physical education and psychology. So it was, the physiology, the biomechanics, the kinesiology, anatomy, everything. I got a deep grounding in that when I was in college. So that really helps with me determining the crazy stuff that I do and, whether it's going to be good or not. So.
Yeah, I mean, I want to make clear for everybody listening and watching, all of Nick's programs, if you go through them, these are all based on science. These are not, they're not random. They're not something that, hey, that looks cool, so we're just going to do that. There's thought, there's passion, there's science, there's experimentation that has all happened to make this happen. So I want, I want to be clear on that, because it's a lot of work.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like you said, this is not just like throwing something for the sake of Instagram or something. It's like I put this stuff together and there's a purpose to it. And a lot of the stuff that I post, there's like, 3 other iterations of it that didn't work. And I don't, obviously put those out. So it's like I'm developing exercises to the point where, okay, now I think this is, ready for prime time and somebody can try this one. But there's, and a lot of the times I come up with something and then I invent something completely different based on what I did for that. That happens to me all the time. It's like, okay, I'm trying to do this chest exercise. I'm like, oh, that works for legs. Great. So now I switch to legs. And it's like, okay, like literally I've done stuff like that. It happens to me constantly where I'm like, this is an okay shoulder exercise, but let me just, okay, now I can do it for back. Okay. Here's a Viking press, with the 2 ends of the barbell pressing up. Okay, what if I set these up higher and then grab the bar and then I'm doing a pull-up with the on the fat ends of the bar with the bars angled down. And let me tell you, the stretch you get on your lats with that is incredible, because that, you get the wide grip hand position like a big giant fat bar. These handles are rolling, so you're getting forearm work, and then they're tilted back like that because of the angle of the bar. And now you've got, that tension going right through everything on the front, really gets into the lats really, really effectively. And it's amazingly the challenge on the grip that you get from it too. So just that comes from a shoulder exercise.
It's fun. Yeah, but it's so funny you're saying that. And I don't know if you're using that, because I used that in the promo post this morning. But that drill, I purposely picked that as a picture to depict you in a way, because I also want people to understand that your programs, your systems, the drills that you're coming up with are not like, they're not circus.
Yeah.
This is going, okay, I like chin-ups. I like pull-ups. How can we hit that same concept, same principle, but potentially from a different angle?
From a different angle or an even better way, or make it even harder.
Right. Leverage point, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to note for you.
Yeah, it's tremendously important. And that's the mad scientist of muscle. The scientist part is actually true.
Yeah.
That's how I approach this stuff. Is I take a scientific look at it. I'm like looking at angles. I'm looking at mechanics. I'm looking at the kinesiology of the joints and stuff like that. Okay, and how can I change that to change up the exercise? Another excellent one that I really like, came up with this 30 years ago. It's basically, I call it a Nilsson curl, because it's a chin up where, say for example, you're on the power rack, you set the rails in like a ladder, like the rungs of a ladder, so that one bar is here, the bar you're gripping on is here, the other bar is here. So you're bracing your forearms against basically the two rungs of a ladder, and then you do a chin up. What that does is, by blocking the forearm, you change the bicep from a secondary mover to a primary mover. So when you're doing a chin up, normally there's freedom of movement and the bicep is secondary. But when you block the forearm, this becomes primary. And you're basically doing curls with your body weight on a body weight exercise, so you get great muscle activation at the same time. And the lats contribute, but the primary mover is the biceps. And I tested this on guys who were, a bodybuilder in the gym one time saw me doing this, and he's like, yeah, I've never seen that before. What is that? And I said, hop on the bar and give it a try. And this guy had arms that were 19 inches and ripped. And he did 3 reps, and he's like, that's the best bicep exercise I've ever done, because it locks that in. And most barbell curling exercises are, I think is it open chain? I always get the two mixed up. But you're moving the weight, whereas when you lock in your hand here, it's closed chain, and you do get, I find, greater muscle activation. So when you do that kind of approach, you actually get better muscle activation, you get more resistance, and you just get overall better bicep training out of it, and it really works well. So.
Yeah, so I believe a basic bicep curl would be open chain, but what you're talking about is you're closing it off. It's like you're creating a floor, and by doing that, it makes it more closed.
Exactly.
Chain.
It's like the difference between, say, like a leg press and a squat. The leg press would
Right.
be open chain because you're moving the resistance. A squat would be closed chain because you're, the limbs, the extremities aren't moving, and your body is moving. So it's the same kind of thing. And, most people will say, okay, yeah, squat's probably going to be better for muscle growth than a leg press. There's arguments to be made there, of course, but it's, generally speaking, that's what people will think. And that's kind of the approach that I took with that. And it really works well. And you got to be strong to do it, but it's worth testing out. So.
Yeah. So over the course of the last 10, 11 podcasts, the focus has really been on the younger years, basically up through high school, college, maybe, but mostly high school. And the reason why having you, one of the many reasons why it's exciting having you on, is that most of your focus in what you do is for folks like myself, like so many other adults. We spend 75% of our life as adults.
Yeah.
And we can't forget about that when it comes to long-term athletic development. So, in your opinion, what do you think that, say, are the top 3 things most important to focus on as we age?
The very top one is strength. That's just absolutely the case. And if you don't have strength, it's the basis of pretty much everything else. Because if you're not strong enough to do cardio, then you're not strong enough to do mobility, you're not strong enough to do anything, then that's when you end up being, less able to do anything as you get older.
Mm-hmm.
So cardiovascular is, I would say, number 2, because that's the system that keeps you alive, and being able to function at a good pace with cardio training is going to be very beneficial. Flexibility and mobility, I kind of, I think it's important, but I would actually put balance number 3, because and balance is actually a component of strength, I find, because if you're not strong enough to correct yourself if you're starting to tip over, it's kind of like a subset of it. But balance is tremendously important too, because if you fall down and break something, that can be really, really bad, especially as you get older. So, you have the strength, you have the cardio, and the balance. You can bring in flexibility and mobility after that, I would say, but those are like the biggest things.
Yeah. Okay, so let's shift just slightly, because one thing that we haven't really spoken about, other than the 8,000 calories, is the nutritional side. And there's something that you have come up with, a conglomerate of sort, called the Start Monday diet. And I've done it myself. I think it's kind of like one of those Homer Simpsons moments where, like, you look at the overview of it and you kind of go, how did I miss this? But can you go through that, go over that, and speak to that, potential way of eating for folks?
Absolutely, yeah. And the real base of this diet is people screw up the weekends, and then they feel guilty, and then they start again on Monday. So that's where the name comes from, is literally with this approach, you reset every single Monday. So we're conditioned in our society to start Monday. Like, if you're going to start a program or a diet, I don't know anybody who says, I'm going to start Thursday. Nobody's going to say that. And it's like, all these motivational people will say, it doesn't matter when you start now. Now is the best time to start. It's like, great. They take that in an advisement and it goes right out the other side, and they say, okay, I'll start on Monday. And it's like, because that's the beginning of the week. That's what our society has conditioned into us. So it's like, why fight that? So what we're going to do here is do a rotational nutrient cycle. So like the first day, Monday, is like a low carb approach to eating. I'm actually experimenting with an even different tweak to it, where I'm doing low carb in the morning and then very low fat in the evening. As long as the calories are in a deficit, you're going to be just fine. And that actually is working pretty well too. But the basic diet is low carb Monday, low carb Tuesday, 24-hour fast until dinner on Wednesday. Now, dinner on Wednesday is very special. Only carbs, no fat, no protein, or as minimal fat and protein as possible, which kind of blows the brains out of a lot of people when they say, what do you mean no protein? Especially if you're a weight trainer, you're like, I'm going to die. My muscles are going to shrivel up in one day of no protein. It's like, they don't. What's going to happen is, and I wish I had studies to back this up. That's just anecdotal stuff. But when you deprive your body of protein, just like when you deprive your body of carbs, it creates a need for your body to accumulate and store protein. So you're basically creating a reason for your body to hold on to protein, and your body holds on to protein primarily in your muscle. So by using that tendency, you not only get the carb loading effect, then the next day you're getting a protein loading effect. So, for me, I go really low calorie Monday, Tuesday, and then on Wednesday it's a big, just giant bucket of oatmeal with fruit, honey, cut up grapes, apples, bananas, the works. Like, when I say bucket, I mean bucket. I mean, the thing is like this, and it's like that deep. And I had that last night because I'm actually doing the diet right now. And but you can eat so much of it, and you're stuffed to the gills, and there's no way you're going to gain an ounce of fat from it, because you've been on low carb, you've just, fasted overnight. So all of those carbs are going straight into your muscle glycogen, your liver glycogen. And if there's anything left, it's all carbs. There's no fat. There's no protein. It's all going to get burned off. Your body's not going to store, a few extra carbs as fat in that state that your body is in. There's just no chance, because not only were you in a deficit in your storage, but now you're also in a deficit on your activity and your basal metabolism. So it's like you can literally stuff yourself to the point where you're like, I never want to eat this again, and it won't cause you to gain an ounce of fat. Next day you're back on low carb. Thursday, Friday you're back on low carb. Going into Saturday, this is where you can free things up a little bit. I do fasting Saturday into Saturday evening, fasting Sunday into Sunday evening. One of those meals can be an all you can eat, all you can stuff into yourself cheat meal. Now, I've had to actually pull back on this myself because I'm capable of eating so much that I can literally mess up. I can literally pave over everything I did the entire week if I eat too much on the weekend.
You're speaking my love language.
I literally was like, okay, I have to actually convince myself, okay, I can't eat everything that I want to eat. Like I can eat a good amount, but if I eat that entire large pizza and the ice cream after, that's going to that's going to wipe out everything I did during the week. So it's like, okay, I'll eat half the pizza or 3/4 of the pizza, save the rest and eat the rest tomorrow. That works better than it's like all you can eat. So, I want to say you can eat whatever you want, but you can, but you can't eat as much as you want of it. Because, if you eat really high calorie density foods, you can basically, wallpaper over everything you accomplish during the week. So there are limits to it, but I find socially this is the easiest way to do it because, how many times do people go into the weekend, they're around friends, they want to go out for dinner, and they either feel guilty and they order the chicken breast at the nice restaurant and dressing on the side and I can't eat any of that stuff. But here it's like, okay, now you can eat pretty much what you want to eat, within reason, but you don't have to you don't even have to tell people you're on a diet because you're eating just, what you would normally eat. And you don't have to feel like you're separate from everybody else, because that's what causes people to go off their diets is social eating. Especially on the weekends, you feel like, okay, I've worked hard all week, I can reward myself with food. By using this approach where you're more strict during the week, you can loosen up and kind of reward yourself on the weekend. And then because it's built into the program, and this is critical, there's no guilt attached to it. When people are on a regular strict diet and it's all the time, you break the diet and you feel so bad about it. Some people say, okay, it's Friday, I've messed up the diet, might as well blow the whole weekend, and just stuff themselves silly and actually end up, gaining more weight than they lost, in the last 2 weeks because of that. So by structuring that into the program, and I don't even call it a cheat meal because it's a meal, so you don't have to have any negative connotations attached to it. But by taking the guilt out, you take the stress out of it, and you basically take those stress hormones out of it. And cortisol, when you're worried about something, it can be a big thing, and it creates a weird relationship with food for a lot of people, or it exacerbates an already weird relationship with food. So by taking that kind of out of the table and off the table, and knowing that on Monday you're just going to reset and start again, it takes a lot of that out of it. So it's not like, okay, I have an 8-week diet program. 3 weeks in, I had a hamburger and French fries. Oh shoot, now I blew the whole thing. Now I got to start over again. It's like, no, it's like you just shake the Etch-a-Sketch, boom, start Monday and you're good to go again, and you just restart. It's the easiest way to get back on track that I've ever found, because you're literally never getting off track, because that's part of the track. And by making it part of the track, it takes away all of the going off the rails, essentially. So it makes it so easy to do. And you just restart again on Monday. And, if you want to eat socially, if you want to flip the Saturday and the Friday, someone wants to go out to dinner on Friday, no problem. Just flip those meals, eat low carb on Saturday, have your normal meal on Sunday, and then you're back on it again.
See, this is exactly what I was saying before from a science standpoint, that people need to understand with the programs that you have created. This is taking into account social, emotional, science, and various things. And I think it's so important, because nutrition, at least for the number of folks that I've worked with, even for myself to a degree, that's a huge challenge. Huge challenge. I mean, I absolutely love food. I love food. And I love eating said food. And I think having a way to build in what the bottleneck is for people is the genius.
Absolutely, yeah. And like I said, by taking away the negatives
Yeah.
of eating, it's like diets. When people on a lot of these diet things, they say, "Oh, it's not your fault." It's like in some cases that's correct. In some cases that isn't necessarily correct. But when the structure of the diet is such that it sets you up to work against your natural instincts and against societal pressures, it makes it a lot harder to,
Yeah.
fall off of it. So my goal is to make it as easy as possible as, to stick with this kind of plan and get in that caloric deficit. And, this is not a case where, eat whatever you want and how much you want and stuff and all that BS. It's like, you do have to get into a caloric deficit. That's how it works. That's how any program works. But we can strategically do it so that you're not really missing anything that you love. You can have chips on the weekend, no problem. You're only going a couple of days on low carb if you want to do low carb, because on the Wednesday you're eating as many carbs as you want, and on that day you literally can eat as many carbs as you want, and you will get to the point where you're like, I just don't want any more. You will, because I can eat a ton, and it's like by the time I'm eating the last bites of that oatmeal, like, oh. And it's like you don't feel bad about it because nothing's getting stored as fat, but it's just that greasing the groove and making it easy to stay in that caloric deficit is really the key. And if you can make it easy, you can take away the guilt. It just makes the odds of success so much higher. You still have to maintain some discipline during the week, especially, and even on the weekends. There's nothing handed to you on a silver platter. You still have to, keep yourself structured. But I find that, because you can eat, more fattier foods on Monday, Tuesday, you can eat all the sweet stuff on Wednesday, the fattier foods, like you can have steak, on Thursday, Friday, and on the weekend, it's literally, you can be much more free with what you eat. You're never missing anything. You're never getting into the concept like, oh, I can never have, a hamburger again. It's like the moment you say that, you're screwed. The moment you think that on a diet, that I can never have such and such again, you're done, because that's all you're going to think about. It's like you tell somebody, don't think about elephants. What's the first thing that pops into their head? Elephant. It's like, okay, I can never have an ice cream sundae. It's like, okay, now all I can think of is ice cream sundae. So if you take that off the table, it's just, it makes it so much easier to stick to.
So let's flip let's flip back to the training side, because I think what what you're seeking to do with that Start Monday diet is create an easy and low to no guilt longevity of nutrition. So you just came out with this new program, Return to Prime, and you're 51 now, and you had said earlier in this episode that you feel as though you're in your 30s. So speak to this program a bit, and where it could help take folks in general.
Absolutely, yeah. And honestly, this program is the coolest thing I've ever put together.
That says a lot. That says a lot.
It does. It's literally, it's really challenging to do, just to even do, but as you go through it, you feel better and better, and you feel just in so many ways. Because what happens kind of as you get older, once you turn 40, a lot of things start to happen in your body. And one of the reasons is like your muscle mass starts to decrease. And training can help, put that off a long period of time. But even with normal training, there still will be muscle loss. So what I've come up with is a way to address the underlying factors that support muscle mass in your body, not necessarily the muscle mass itself as a direct target. So by doing this program, it makes everything you do after work better. So if you're doing a muscle building program, if you're over 50, you might gain a couple of pounds. After you do this program, you might gain like 5 to 7 pounds of it, because of how we're targeting the underlying factors, the underlying physiological aspects of your body. And I've come up with, there's 4 main systems that kind of support this. So the first phase of this is your circulatory system, your capillaries or capillaries, however you want to pronounce it, which are the tiny little blood vessels where oxygen exchange and nutrient exchange take place. As we get older, and this is again goes right to the science, your body starts to eliminate those tiny little blood vessels. Starts at the extremities and works its way backwards. This is why, as you get older, arms and legs and grip strength and hand strength start to decrease, because those little blood vessels are getting pared back. Not disappearing completely, but they're getting pared back. With training, we can actually build those back. So you can rebuild that capillary density. And with very specific training, it is entirely possible. There's entire, scientific journals dedicated to what's called angiogenesis, which is the building up of new blood vessels. And that's what we do with training, and even with targeted supplementation. And the goal basically is to push as much blood into those muscles as possible, and then increase the localized blood pressure to that muscle, and basically force those pathways to open back up or to create new pathways. And once you do that, your body can feed those muscles again, because your body is taking away that muscle mass because nutritionally it can't support it. So by rebuilding the nutritional support and the capability of feeding those muscles again, you're much more likely to be able to hold on to that same amount of mass, or even build more mass more easily. So it's really a cool way to train. And the first time people do this, they're amazed at not necessarily how hard it is, but how much of a pump they get from it, because it's designed to pump as much blood into the muscle as possible. To give you an example, you do take 2 sets of dumbbells, one really light and one fairly heavy. So when I do this, I do 25-pound dumbbells on a dumbbell press, and I do 85-pound dumbbells on a dumbbell press. I do a set of 50 to 60 reps light. Immediately set those down, pick up the 85s, and do 2 reps. So you're pumping a lot of blood with the high reps, and then you're increasing the local blood pressure with the low rep heavyweight. Set that heavyweight down, grab the light ones again, and do the same thing again. Crank out as many reps as you can, pump that blood back into the muscle, and then go back to the heavy ones again. So you're going back and forth between 4 and 6 times. So you're literally no rest, boom, 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 boom. And you're getting blood into that target muscle constantly for about 7 to 8 minutes. And it literally is like prolonging the pump for that period of time, and it just feels amazing when you do it. And it's crazy effective for building up the capillary density in your body, because of how much blood it's forcing through your muscles in that fashion with the localized increase in pressure. So.
I can only imagine, just sitting up from pressing that amount of time under tension and volume. I mean, the pump has got to be Arnold level pump. If you don't sit up and start talking Austrian, there's something wrong.
Yeah, you're going to have an accent when you sit up. The coolest part of this is, in order to really build those blood vessels, you have to have arginine in the bloodstream at the time. So your body actually has some all the time, but we take a specific supplement before, and it's not arginine. We take citrulline. So you take a good dose of citrulline, like 8 to 10 grams, converts into arginine in the bloodstream at a rate 100 times more than you'll actually get in your bloodstream by taking actual arginine.
Wow.
Because the gut soaks up arginine, but it doesn't soak up citrulline. So it converts, and then you get that in your bloodstream. And citrulline is notorious for giving you monster pumps. So you combine that nutrient with this type of training, it's ridiculous. And it's, the first time, it's one of the benefits of having this going first in the training program, is because it's highly addictive the first time you do it. And it's it motivates people. They're like, oh man, this felt so good, I'm going to keep going. Even though they might be sore as hell the next couple of days, they're like, but I really want to do this.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
All right. So let me just ask you, I know we're only on part 1 of 4, but let me just, what about females? Because traditionally, guys would go in the gym and it's like Tim the Toolman Taylor, grunting, and they love the pump, it's like, oh man, that feels good. But women, not so much. They don't get as excited as the guys do. So Is there a difference in phase one for men, women? How does that work?
I'll be honest with you, I designed this program primarily with men in mind.
Ah, okay.
Women can absolutely do it and get the same benefits from it,
Yep.
but men will be more drawn to it, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely effective for women as well. And I know there are women out there who love the feeling of, feeling strong and
Yeah.
solid and pumped up too. And, there's no slight here because this is, more with men in mind. Women can 100% do this program and get the same benefits from it.
So
But they will just have to know that this is going to be the effect of it. Like you will be doing pump training, you will be doing heavy loading, in order to be effective. This is what part of the program is. So it's like obviously men are going to be more drawn to that than women.
yeah.
But I
You know,
am considering putting together a female version of this program, a female targeted version of this program together as well.
yeah. Because I think a lot of the pullback or the hesitation for females in general, stepping into a gym or like a performance gym is, oh, I don't want to look big and bulky and muscular. This particular training will probably do that, but I mean, it will also speak to their love of wanting to burn fat too, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. You by increasing blood vessel density, you get more access to the body fat too.
Yeah.
So that's how it really works too with the growth hormone. Like when you're doing very high reps, you get lactate buildup, aka lactic acid. That pH change causes the body to secrete growth hormone, which actually is a very good burner of stubborn fat. It unlocks those receptors that open up stubborn fat. So it actually can help with stubborn fat loss this phase of the program too.
Awesome.
So it's not the goal, but it's not a bad side effect.
Yeah, no doubt.
So,
Yeah, I'll take that side effect over hair loss.
absolutely.
Okay, so that's phase one.
Yeah.
What's phase two?
Phase two is connective tissue. So that goes to like what I was talking about before, with the heavy supports and the partials and stuff. As we get older, our connective tissue literally dries out. It literally dries out from the inside out. Because connective tissue is more of a passive circulatory system, not active like the heart pumping blood through your muscles, connective tissue relies on compression and decompression to create circulation. So what we're going to do is artificially create circulation via compression and decompression. And normal weight training does this to some extent. And in all four of these phases that I'm going to talk about, normal weight training does some of this, but not to the extent that you can really keep up with the decline. So by focusing literally on just the goal, that's why we're getting such good results out of this kind of training. So with this connective tissue training, the base of it is, for example, we'll go to the lockout holds. You have, start with just your 1 rep max weight on squat and just hold it there on your back, 3-minute block. If you can't hold for 3 minutes, set it down, rest a few seconds, stand back up. That's going to compress down on your body. That's going to squeeze that fluid out of your connective tissue. Set the weight down in between your next set and that set. You're going to do decompression. So you're going to do like a dead hang from a chin-up bar. You're going to go in the captain's chair, the ab chair, and just hold and let everything kind of just, decompress. So we create a literal bellows effect by doing this. And it pushes the fluid out and it sucks it back in. And this is tremendously powerful for healing connective tissue. I've had people go through this program and basically heal old injuries that they've had for 30 years, and they're like, I did this program and now my knee doesn't hurt anymore. And they're just blown away. And it can work like that because supplementally we take 2 specific supplements, vitamin C and collagen/gelatin. By getting those in before you train, they're circulating through your bloodstream while you're training. So you're by compressing and decompressing and creating that bellows circulation, you're pulling those nutrients into the joints and the connective tissue where they need to go, where normally they wouldn't get pulled into. That's why as we get older, it takes so long to heal connective tissue because the circulation is compromised. You're not loading enough to get that circulation through the connective tissue. Whereas by doing that and then supplying the raw materials to rebuild and heal with, the body can do what it's supposed to do. There's nothing magical about it. It's just now you're giving the bricklayer the bricks, essentially. whereas he may had like a couple of bricks before. Now he's getting as many bricks as he needs, and he's able to build the wall. And that's what I do with my training. With the heavy stuff right now too, is I take the C and the collagen before, get that circulating, and then I do the connective tissue training. And it's incredibly effective for that. And there are a few other methods that I bring into the second phase there, but that's kind of the gist of it, is to create that compression, decompression, circulation.
So with each phase, so like phase 1, you recommended citrulline, right?
Mm-hmm.
In phase 2, you're talking about vitamin C, collagen. Are you stopping citrulline when you're in phase 2, or are you continuing that on?
I recommend continuing, just keeping doing it, because citrulline in general converts to arginine, which converts to nitric oxide, which is very powerful for your circulatory system, for blood vessel health. So I actually take it constantly.
Okay.
There's no real upper limit how much you can take. In the studies, they show about 8 grams is good. I've tested all the way up to 30 to 40 grams in one shot. No side effects whatsoever from it. In mouse studies, they go like 10 times that, and there's no side effects from it. So I found about two heaping teaspoons is good for me. Like I hit about 15, 16 grams, and it doesn't do much more than that once you get beyond that. So, but citrulline, take it all the way through. Creatine is good, take it all the way through.
Yep.
Yeah.
So heavy supports, decompression, compression. That's 2.
Yeah. So phase 3 is fun. It's hyperplasia training. So hypertrophy is when you build up and grow the fibers that you've already got. As we get older, your body starts to lose muscle fibers. You lose specifically more of the fast twitch muscle fibers, the big powerful ones, unless you use them. But that even if you use them, there is a process where those start to diminish. So what we're doing with this phase is to attempt to split and get more muscle fibers. So in research studies, they've proven this in animals. They've not directly proven it in humans, but there is indirect evidence to show that it does happen with the right training. The reason it's not direct is because literally you have to cut the muscle and count the fibers. And there's not a lot of volunteers lining up to do that. So it's like that's the kind of the holdup, for now. That's the holdup, to show that, it does happen in humans, but there is a lot of direct research in animals that's just incredible, like 300% increase in muscle size, with proper training. And that training is stretch training, loaded stretch training, and more specifically than that, resisted loaded stretch training. So I'll give you an example of this. So dumbbell flies. You're holding the bottom of a dumbbell fly. That's a normal stretch, and you come back up. If you're doing stretch training, you let that come in, and a lot of times, you're just passively holding that stretch. That's not good enough for what we need here. What we want to do is get into that bottom position, come up just a little bit, and then exert 98% of the force it would take to lift the weight, and hold it there for 40 seconds to a minute. So you're not just passively stretching. This is not flexibility training. This is holding that stretch position, coming up just a little bit out of it, and then exerting not quite enough force, but almost as much force to lift the weight. And it doesn't sound too bad, but as you get into 30 to 40 seconds of it, it's a challenge. And this kind of loaded, resisted stretching is incredible for hypertrophy, for one thing, and then hyperplasia. Because what you want to do first, within a couple of weeks of this training, hypertrophy is going to give way to hyperplasia. Like, you don't start off splitting the muscle fibers. They actually have to grow up fairly big first and then split, is what I've found. So during the first couple of weeks of this hyperplasia training, you'll, without even trying, gain 5 to 6 pounds. And then the following week, it won't be as much of a weight gain on the scale, but that's when the hyperplasia is really starting to take place via satellite cell activation and stuff like that. And that's, in theory at least, because there's no direct evidence, I am getting ahead of the science in some ways, but the training protocol that I come up with, I run it by Dr. Jose Antonio, who actually did the studies on the birds and the cats, and he said, this potentially has merit here. So, he was very positive about what could be accomplished with it. So it's like, that's why, going back to the science part of it, it's like, this is not just stuff thrown together. It's like I really delved into the science to see, maybe there's no direct evidence, but this has the best chance of working.
Yeah. It kind of sounds like, and I I absolutely want you to correct me if I'm wrong, but it almost sounds like PNF on steroids.
It's pretty much exactly what it is, yeah. PNF when you're exerting force for 5 seconds or so,
Right.
and then you get a greater range of motion.
Right.
This is what this kind of pretty much is.
Yeah.
It's like instead of 5 seconds, you're doing, okay, now you're 40 to 60 seconds. Now we're doing drop sets with it. Now you're doing, like seriously. Like I'm not kidding. It's like, say you're doing chest, the first 2 sets. The first sets is like a normal weight, okay, you're doing flies just to warm up the tissue. Now, when I was doing this, okay, now it's 2 sets of holding 65-pound dumbbells in the bottom position for 40 seconds. And then 2 sets of 60 and then 40s. And then 2 sets of 60, 40, 20. So literally by the time you've gone through all that, it's like, okay, your body has no choice but to grow from that. It literally has no choice.
Phase 1, you get up speaking with an accent. By phase 3, you're done and you're peeing your pants at that point. I mean, holy cow. That I'm just picturing all this. All right, any specific supplements in phase 3?
Yeah, and this is a cool one. This arachidonic acid, omega-9. Now, this one is highly optional because it's actually a pro-inflammatory. And so if you have any issues with inflammation, you don't have to do this one.
Okay.
It's really powerful though when you are able to do it. And I'll get a bottle of this stuff and I'll destroy the whole bottle in the whole 3 weeks. And this actually, we want that inflammation for muscle growth. It's one of the reasons that they say don't take vitamin C or anti-inflammatories after you train, because that'll basically kill the muscle growth response. So if you're taking Tylenol or stuff like that, don't do it right after training, because that kills the muscle growth response. That you need some level of inflammation. So this is pro-inflammatory in that respect. And the hyperplasia training is challenging to the body. And by localizing increased inflammation for a short period of time, you can actually support that process and really hyperdrive that process. And I should add too, with the hyperplasia training, this one is volume-wise the most challenging. So each workout is an hour and a half. You can adjust it to be about an hour with some changes to it, but you're working every muscle every day, 6 days a week for 3 weeks in this fashion, because we actually are looking for incomplete recovery. Because we're not looking for injury, we're looking for resisted loaded stretch on that muscle in that position, and incomplete recovery between sessions. And that's an incredibly strong stimulus. But because you're not actually moving the weight so much, it's not actually creating a lot of muscle damage. So you'll find that you're not getting super sore from it, but you can come back the next day and do it again and do it again and do it again without much of a problem. So it's because the actual training, there's not a lot of movement involved, you're not creating much muscle damage, but you're creating the stimulus for hypertrophy and hyperplasia.
Awesome. All right, last phase 4.
This is where kind of everything comes together in terms of strength. So this is nervous system efficiency and activation. Now, as we get older, and in keeping with all these systems that fade out as we get older, nerves start to die as we get older. And there's unfortunately nothing we can really do about it. There's no way to regenerate them that we know of at this time. Hopefully that'll change, but right now there's nothing. So what we got to do is teach your body to use what we've got most efficiently as possible. So when you're doing training for strength athletes who have weight classes, this is how they get stronger. They learn better technique, they learn how to best use the muscles and the strength that they've got, and they basically get more efficient in their movement patterns. So you could take somebody who is potentially 75% efficient, and at the very same body weight, now they're 85% efficient. So they're going to be, 10% stronger without basically changing any size of their muscle mass. And this is what we're going for here. So the training is very specifically geared towards improving the efficiency of how your body's working and the amount of activation your nervous system can get. So now instead of, say, working at your baseline of 60%, you're now working at 70 or 75%. So, instead of your strength diminishing, you can build back up very quickly like that, because your body is able to work more efficiently again. So one of the real powerhouse training methods that I've used for this is a single rep cluster training. And this is a 20 rep single rep cluster training. Now, what we're doing here is taking a weight that's around like low 90s in percentage of your 1 rep max. So you're using a substantial weight here. You're going to do a single rep with it. You're going to rest. I think it's 10 seconds. I can't even remember my own protocol sometimes. But you're going to take a short rest, 10 seconds or 20 seconds, whatever it was, and do another single rep, and then rest, and then do another single rep, and then rest. And you're going to do this for 20 reps. So you're taking a weight that you could normally get maybe 3 or 4 reps with, and you're doing a set of 20 with it. But you're doing it in a way that your body can regenerate the energy substrates, so the ATP, PC, the very powerful ones. Now, the coolest part about this is your first rep is not going to ever be your best rep. Your second rep, your third rep, up in through like the 8th, 9th rep, those are going to be your best reps. Because you're not fatigued, really, but your nervous system is getting more tuned to that movement with that weight. So as you go through, your body is drilling down on that. You're really greasing the groove, as Pavel Tsatsouline would say, to that specific movement pattern. So your body is learning how to do it. It's like immersion training on that exercise. You know, how you learn a language. It's like, okay, now you're just doing that, and you're focusing on just doing that. But the first rep is never going to be your best rep. The second rep, and that's why we're doing these as singles, is because, for example, like on a bench press, your second rep, you might lose your shoulder position depending on if you're not resetting between reps. But with this, you're resetting between every rep, so you're starting from a perfect position on every single rep. So every single rep you do is going to be perfectly drilling that movement pattern into your nervous system and mapping it to your nervous system. And then you do that for 20 reps. If you find you're getting towards the end of it and your reps aren't looking ugly, you're really starting to suffer, you can end the set early. There's no benefit to pushing to fatigue or total failure on this.
Yeah.
We want to keep the movement powerful and clean and solid form every time to train your body and teach your body for that. But that's basically the gist of that phase. And there are other training methods I've got in there, like isometrics. But that's kind of the gist of it, where we're not necessarily fatiguing the body, but we're using Neo in the Matrix, and we're giving him kung fu. That's what we're doing. You're learning how to do kung fu by plugging that right into your Matrix. Now you can fly a helicopter, that kind of thing. Now you can do a heavy bench press. Now you can do a heavy squat. Because lightweight sets don't train your body to do heavy sets. If you're doing a 12 rep bench press, that doesn't teach your body how to do a 1 rep bench press. It's a whole different kind of setup and a whole different set of motor units. So what we're doing is we're training those specific heavier motor units, those specific movement patterns more effectively, more efficiently, and then suddenly everything just gets stronger. And it builds on all of the other phases. So your connective tissue needs to be strong enough to handle those heavier loads. Your circulatory system needs to be able to transfer, clear waste products out. It needs to be able to, regenerate ATP, PC, and all that. And your muscle fibers, now you have more of them. Now they're going to be able to contribute more to that exercise. So it's like everything builds up to that final phase. And honestly, with the final phase, it's set at only 3 weeks. But if you're still building strength, you can keep going with it as long as you want, as long as you're coming up in strength. And you can, develop, make some really incredible gains in strength during that phase.
I don't know. I mean, I almost think phase 4 is maybe the hardest. Geez, out of all of them.
Yeah, it can be very challenging, and the training in that 4th phase is actually really fun because you see your weights going up on almost a daily basis.
Right.
Because of all the work you've done before is going into this, and because now, okay, this is real nervous system training. This is real plug it into the matrix kind of training.
Yeah.
And it really works incredibly well. So, and some of the methods that I use in there are tried and true, stuff that's, been used in powerlifting for a long time in Olympic lifting.
Yeah.
So there's stuff in there, it's like, here, do 8 sets of 2 reps, very, very quickly, lightweight, but really just explosive, and using like bands or chains and that kind of thing if you have them available to get accommodating resistance. And, so there's a lot of stuff that some people will be familiar with. It's just kind of how you put it all together that really makes a difference in that phase.
Supplements in that phase.
In this phase, it's more like nervous system support stuff, omega-6s, like fish oil, that kind of thing.
Mm.
Is it 6 or 3? I think it's
Well,
omega 3s.
omega 3 is typically like the anti-inflammatory.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Like, for all my science background, sometimes I get simple things mixed up.
Look,
Yeah,
Einstein never had matching socks, so
yeah,
cut yourself a break here.
yeah. But yeah, so it's like, okay, you've got your B vitamins are great for nervous system support. It's basically support stuff in that. You can take caffeinated pre-workout stuff, totally fine with that too. I personally am not a big fan of that
Mm,
because I find it gets my nervous system a bit too much, cranked up too much.
mm,
But you absolutely, if you're good with caffeine, take caffeine before that. It'll wake you up a little bit too.
yeah.
So no problem there at all.
Okay. All right. So, man, we've hit a lot of points here from diet and nutrition stuff to training and really the mind body spirit connection of like all of this. I want to just kind of finish with two questions. One is what are your concerns for the future, just in general for people as they age or in the fitness or health and fitness industry? What are your main concerns? And then what are you excited like what are you most excited about?
I think the main concerns I would have is just the rates of obesity in this country. It's like, I understand people, body positivity, and, it's like I support that too, but you have to realize that also carrying way too much weight, it just is not good for your body. And, I've seen people who are overweight who can run marathons, and that is fantastic. And in no way am I trying to shame anybody, but there is a level where your body just carrying more weight, that's going to affect your longevity. It's going to affect how you can move and how you can get up out of a chair. If you weigh 250 pounds versus if you weigh 150 pounds, obviously it's much easier to get out of a chair when you're 150 pounds. So, and I'm not taking myself out of this either. It's like last year I kind of let my eating go and I got myself up to 220 pounds again. And it's like, and I realized, okay, this is not good. And I cut back and, right now I'm just under 200, which is a much better weight. And I'm going to go even lower. But just your body having to support more weight, it's just tougher on the body, and it's going to affect your quality of life. Like I said, not trying to shame anybody here, but you'll just feel better a little bit lighter, and your health will be better when you're a little bit lighter.
Mm,
And I think there's kind of a tendency for, poor eating habits to really kind of increase the obesity rates in, most Western countries these days, and it's going to affect health so much more in the long run. And it makes me sad when I see it because a lot of it is avoidable. Again, it's like not everybody, it is tougher for some people who are overweight to lose fat based on, their physiology, their genetics, and their environment. But anything you can do to kind of mitigate that is going to help you live longer and better. And unfortunately, the trend seems to be going in the wrong direction in a lot of ways.
mm, yeah.
But on the other hand, what could be the flip side is exciting is with the advent of AI is the capability to have your own personal trainer as an AI, essentially. It's not going to ever, I don't think it should ever replace a human trainer because there are so many different nuances that a human trainer can bring to you.
Uh-huh.
And experience and what you need may not be what an AI basically is going to like compress all the data that it can pull in. And sometimes it gets to the point where, okay, it's like, okay, now it's reading regurgitated data that's from trainers who don't know what they're doing. And it's like, okay, so you have to take it with a grain of salt sometimes. And that's where a human trainer can kind of help you parse that. But AI could be potentially like a lot of people are using AI for therapy for therapy right now because it's obviously cheap. So they're actually getting therapy treatments where maybe they couldn't before, and that's helping their mental health. So the same could potentially happen with physical fitness, and to get an AI trainer who is your companion wherever you go to help encourage you to keep going. Like accountability is huge. Groups of people have accountability. You can program AI for accountability as well. So that's something where, as AI kind of takes over more and more jobs, it's going to be a massive shift and nobody really knows where that's going. If it's going to be like a Wall-E situation where everybody's in a pod that's floating around as a big, it's like, okay, I don't have to do anything physical anymore. I hope we don't get to that point. I hope we get to the point where, okay, now maybe you don't have to work as hard because your AI is making things more efficient, and now you can put more time into being healthy.
Yeah.
Now it's like, okay, maybe before you didn't have time to exercise, now you have more perceived time to exercise, and you can do it and find something you enjoy and do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the one thing that everybody, can't change is time. We're older now than we were, an hour and 40 minutes ago when we started. So if you can utilize AI for efficiency, just like your phase 4, I think it could certainly catapult, let's say, the time to achieving what you want to achieve. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that time is the number one thing that people say when they don't exercise. It's
right.
Like, I don't have time. I don't have the time.
Right.
It's like, maybe this will help somebody have the time.
Yeah.
So, cautiously optimistic.
Well, fair enough.
Yeah.
I want to encourage folks to find you on various platforms. On Instagram, it's your name and then the number 1. On Facebook, your name. You could kind of do the easy thing and Google, mad scientist of muscle, and it'll bring you to the website where all the products that you have are there, and programs really is what it comes down to, are the various programs. And one of the things that I specifically like is when you go to Nick's site, whatever you're interested in. If it's strength, there are strength programs for that. If it's getting ripped or lean, there are programs for that. There are unconventional training programs if you're into that. So I would highly encourage folks to go on and see what Nick's up to.
Yeah, absolutely. And the 2 websites to go to, madscientistofmuscle.com, that'd be the main one where you could find all the unconventional stuff. If you're interested in read more about that Return to Prime program, returntoprime.net. And just type that in and you'll go right to the page for it.
Nice. Excellent. Yeah, thank you. Well, sir, I greatly appreciate your time, your energy, and your continued passion in this industry, but just in general for sharing your creativity, because I think we need more of it. And I think it's, like you said, it's never too late, and there's always a way, and certainly with your programs, it should give people some hope.
Absolutely. Yeah, and anything you do to make training fun, that's what I'm for.
Yeah.
Because that's the stuff that I do, the creative stuff, that's fun to me. That's my idea of fun. I love this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you very much, and I appreciate very much your expertise.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Okay. Bye now.